They found him alone, slumped forward in his recliner, no signs of injury, no cry for help, just silence, the TV still glowing. His robe still open, and a quiet emptiness in the room, the kind of stillness that only follows something irreversible. The autopsy listed natural causes, but to those of us who know the signs, it was something else. Silent hormonal collapse. The slow unraveling of a man's vitality, not because of disease, but because of neglect. And sadly, he's not the only one. Every year, thousands of older men experience the same decline. In strength, in sexual function, in emotional clarity, all while thinking they're doing the right thing by giving up what they assume they no longer need. For decades, we've told men to stay away from self-pleasure, that it's immature, shameful, unnecessary, but after age 60, that belief can quietly cost you everything, because here's the truth no one's saying aloud. When you stop masturbating in old age, your body doesn't just pause, it begins to deteriorate. Your prostate stagnates, your testosterone crashes, your emotional resilience withers, and by the time you feel the effects, you're already years behind. I'm Dr. Mohit Kara, a board-certified urologist and men's health specialist with over 40 years of experience helping aging men reclaim their vitality, confidence, and quality of life. I've sat with farmers, veterans, teachers, and grandfathers who all thought they were doing the right thing by abstaining. And I've watched the quiet regret in their eyes when the damage finally caught up. Because most of them had no idea that the habits they picked up decades ago, habits society told them were shameful, are now silently backfiring in the most critical years of their life. But there's good news. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 4 real health consequences that occur when you stop masturbating in older age, and more importantly, how to prevent them before it's too late. These are simple, practical, medically sound solutions that thousands of my patients have used to protect their sexual health, restore their energy, and avoid common issues that most men mistake as just getting old. And make sure you stay until the end, because the last consequence I'll share is the one even most doctors won't talk about. Yet it's also the one that could silently triple your risk of prostate complications if left unaddressed. If you care about protecting your body, your confidence, and your independence as you age, you'll want to hear it. And if you're watching right now, type 1 in the comments if you're with me, or 0 if you're skeptical. I welcome both, because this is a conversation older men deserve to have, without shame and with real answers. Now let's begin with the first, and perhaps most dangerously overlooked, consequence of giving up masturbation in old age. I've seen it more times than I can count. A man in his late 60s or early 70s walks into my office, confused and frustrated. He tells me he hasn't had a spontaneous erection in months. Sometimes it's been over a year, and what shakes him the most isn't the lack of performance. It's the suddenness of it all. One day he felt like himself. The next, something inside just stopped working. It catches most men off guard. Why? Because no one ever told them that giving up sexual activity could cause their sexual function to fade away like an unused muscle. Let me put this plainly. Your penis is not just an ornament. It's a functional organ that requires regular circulation to stay healthy. When you go long stretches without any stimulation, especially after age 60, something dangerous begins to happen. Blood flow slows down. Oxygen delivery decreases. The tissues begin to stiffen, not in the good way, but in the way that leads to fibrosis, nerve damage, and irreversible loss of erectile capacity. That's not just theory. That's basic vascular biology. Think of it like this. If you stopped moving your legs entirely for 6 months, what would happen? You'd lose muscle, coordination, flexibility. You might even forget how to walk. The same principle applies to the penis. After a certain age, it doesn't just go on standby. It starts shutting down when not used. And the worst part? This decline doesn't come with a loud warning. It's silent, creeping. You don't notice until it's too late. One day you realize your morning erections are gone. Then even physical touch or fantasy doesn't do the trick. Eventually, even with medication, the body doesn't respond the way it used to, because the foundation has already eroded. I've had men sit across from me, eyes watering, asking if they can get it back. Some do, with aggressive therapy, lifestyle changes, and medical support. But others, they waited too long. They thought quitting masturbation was harmless, that it was a sign of self-control, but in reality, it was the quiet beginning of functional decay. And let me be clear, this isn't about being obsessed with sex. It's about protecting a vital part of your circulatory system, your hormone regulation, and your masculine identity. Maintaining occasional solo activity, even once or twice a week, can keep the blood flowing, keep the nerves alive, and remind your body that this function still matters. The truth is, what you don't use, you start to lose. And when you're older, that loss can be permanent. I've seen it devastate men, not because they're trying to impress anyone, but because it impacts their self-esteem, their relationships, their sense of being a man. And what's most tragic, it was preventable, completely preventable. All it required was consistency, not indulgence, but attention. Now, while most men fear losing their erections, what they don't realize is that's just the beginning, because the next consequence of quitting masturbation affects something even deeper, your hormones. And once they begin to crash, the ripple effects go far beyond the bedroom. Let me show you exactly how. It usually starts subtly. A man stops feeling like himself, but he can't quite explain why. He's not as excited to get out of bed in the morning. He skips his walks. His appetite changes. His mood gets flatter. He feels more tired during the day, more irritable, more withdrawn, and deep down, he senses something important is slipping away, but he can't put his finger on it. In my clinic, I've seen men chalk it up to aging, to stress, to bad sleep. But when we dig deeper, we often find the same root cause. Their testosterone has dropped, not just naturally with age, but accelerated by the complete loss of sexual stimulation. And here's what most people never hear. Masturbation is one of the few non-pharmaceutical ways older men can stimulate natural testosterone production. It's not about sex or fantasy. It's about biology. When you engage in regular arousal and release, your brain sends signals that help regulate your hormonal rhythm. Dopamine levels rise, the hypothalamus activates, and your testicles, even in your 60s or 70s, get the message, keep producing testosterone. But when you stop that process altogether, when you go weeks or months with no sexual activity at all, the message your body receives is the opposite. It thinks intimacy is no longer needed, so it scales back hormone production. And once that cycle begins, it can become hard to reverse. Men with low testosterone don't just feel tired, they begin to lose their identity. They can't focus. They lose interest in the things that once made them proud. Their muscles begin to weaken. Their bones become more fragile. They become more prone to depression. And perhaps most dangerously of all, their cardiovascular risk increases, putting them in greater danger of heart attacks and strokes. I've seen once vibrant men become shadows of themselves within a few short years, not because they were sick, but because no one ever told them how vital healthy, regular sexual stimulation is for maintaining hormonal health. One patient of mine, a retired firefighter, told me after his hormone levels dropped, he began to feel like he didn't matter anymore. His words still sit with me. He said, "Doc, I don't even recognize the man in the mirror." And I'll never forget the look in his eyes. It wasn't vanity, it was grief. And this didn't have to happen. With a little education and a simple habit he thought was wrong, he could have preserved not just his hormones, but his happiness, his energy, his drive. Because here's the hard truth. Once your testosterone crashes in old age, it can take years of therapy and thousands of dollars to get it back, if it comes back at all. But with steady, respectful engagement in your own intimacy, you can hold the line longer than most people think possible. And while hormones are often invisible, the next consequence is something every man feels in a much more physical, sometimes painful way. A condition that builds quietly deep inside the body until it starts interfering with your daily life. And most don't even realize it's tied to one simple thing they're no longer doing. Let me explain. There's a kind of discomfort older men don't often talk about. A heavy, dull ache deep in the pelvis, a strange pressure after sitting too long, or the nagging need to urinate even when the bladder isn't full. It doesn't come on suddenly like a heart attack. It builds slowly, quietly, until it starts disrupting your daily life. And by the time most men mention it to their doctor, they've already been living with it for months, sometimes years. What's shocking is how often this silent suffering can be traced back to one overlooked cause: prostate congestion caused by a lack of ejaculation. Your prostate isn't just a bystander in the male body, it's an active gland that produces and stores seminal fluid. That fluid is meant to move, it's meant to be flushed. When you stop masturbating or having sex completely, especially in your later years, that fluid sits. And when it sits, it thickens. Pressure builds. Inflammation creeps in. That's when you start noticing changes: slower urine flow, discomfort in your lower back, that constant need to go feeling that wakes you up in the middle of the night. As a urologist, I can't tell you how many older patients come in thinking they have a bladder issue, only to discover that what they're dealing with is an irritated, inflamed prostate. In many cases, the solution isn't medication, it's movement. It's the body's natural cleansing process through regular ejaculation. And when that process is ignored for too long, the consequences can be severe. Some men develop chronic prostatitis, a painful, long-term inflammation that's difficult to treat and even harder to live with. Others find themselves needing invasive procedures just to feel normal again. And beyond the physical discomfort, there's another layer of danger that most men never hear about. Research, including a well-known Harvard study, has shown that regular ejaculation may help lower the risk of prostate cancer. The theory is simple. When the prostate is regularly emptied, it reduces the buildup of potentially harmful substances. But when that fluid is allowed to stagnate for months on end, it may increase inflammation and long-term risk. One man I treated had gone almost 2 years without any sexual activity. He didn't feel the need, he told me, thought it was behind him. But when his PSA levels spiked and we ran more tests, we found significant congestion. His prostate was swollen and irritated, and he was facing biopsy discussions that could have been avoided with something as simple and natural as maintaining occasional release. This isn't about encouraging lust or indulgence. It's about preventing suffering. It's about understanding that the male body doesn't suddenly stop needing care after 60. If anything, it needs more attention, more respect. The prostate is one of the most vulnerable organs in older men. And when neglected, the damage isn't just uncomfortable, it can be life-altering. But while a congested prostate might cause pain, irritation, and long nights running to the bathroom, the final consequence hits deeper. It strikes at the core of how a man feels about himself. And for many, it's the one they never see coming until it's already taken hold. Let me show you what I mean. It's the quietest decline of all, and often the most devastating. It doesn't show up on blood tests. It's not something you can easily measure, but you feel it, deep down. A slow fading of the spark you once had, a creeping sense of disconnection, a distance from yourself that you can't quite explain. It happens gradually. You stop masturbating because you think you don't need to anymore. You tell yourself it's age, or a lack of interest, or simply the way life works when you're not in a relationship. But over time, that decision doesn't just affect your body. It reaches into your mind, your emotions, your very sense of being alive. I've spoken with men who've said they feel hollow inside, not because of disease or pain, but because they've gone months, sometimes years, without any form of release, without any intimacy, even with themselves. And slowly, they begin to feel invisible, unwanted, unnecessary. They don't talk about it, of course. Most older men were never taught how, but it shows in the way they walk, in the way they avoid mirrors, in the way their voices grow quieter when you ask how they're doing. This isn't about sex. This is about vitality, about the subtle but powerful connection between your physical body and your emotional well-being. When you give up self-pleasure entirely, you cut off one of the last remaining pathways to joy, to self-recognition, to feeling human. And for men over 60, that's not just a loss, that's a wound. Because arousal, pleasure, and release aren't just for youth. They're part of what keeps your brain engaged, your hormones balanced, your emotions healthy. Neurologically, the chemicals released during masturbation, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, are essential for regulating mood, reducing anxiety, and reinforcing emotional stability. Without them, men are more likely to experience depression, loneliness, and even cognitive decline. I've seen men who were once confident and sociable slowly become isolated, withdrawn, and apathetic, not because their lives changed drastically, but because they stopped connecting with a part of themselves that once made them feel alive. And here's what makes this so dangerous. Many men don't realize this connection exists. They never link the emotional numbness to the decision they made months ago to stop engaging in intimacy. By the time they feel the effects, the damage has already begun, and reversing it requires more than just hormone therapy or a new routine. It takes rebuilding the relationship with yourself, remembering that even in old age, your body still longs to feel, to express, to connect. This is the consequence that breaks my heart the most, because it's the one that steals a man's dignity without him even realizing it. It takes away the quiet confidence he used to carry, the warmth he used to offer, and leaves behind a shell he no longer recognizes. But here's the truth I want every man to hear. It's never too late to come back to yourself. Never too late to reawaken the energy you thought was gone. And in the final part of this video, I'll show you exactly how. The simple, science-backed steps you can take today to restore what so many older men have lost, and what you still have the power to protect. Let's finish this together. There's a belief many older men carry, that intimacy, pleasure, and desire are things you grow out of, that after a certain age, your body is supposed to go quiet, that it's noble, maybe even respectable, to give that part of yourself up. But after more than 30 years as a doctor working with men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, I can tell you, that belief is costing far too many men their health, their happiness, and their identity. You've heard today how stopping masturbation can lead to the slow breakdown of your sexual function, a dangerous drop in your hormones, the swelling and inflammation of your prostate, and a silent emotional numbness that erodes your spirit day by day. These aren't small changes. These are life-altering shifts that happen not because of aging, but because of neglect. But the good news is, it doesn't have to be this way. Your body still remembers how to feel, your mind still longs for connection, and your health still depends on you honoring every part of yourself, even the parts no one else sees. This isn't about lust, it's about life. It's about preserving what makes you feel strong, whole, and human. You don't need to feel ashamed for choosing health over silence. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to take it seriously. Take it personally, because it is personal. And if you're ready to take back control of this part of your life, I'm with you. You're not alone, and you're not done yet. If this message spoke to something inside you, even just a little, type 1 in the comments to let me know you're still here, that you still care, that you're still fighting for your health. And if it didn't, that's okay too. Type 0 and tell me what you need. Either way, your voice matters, and you're not alone.